Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the process theories of motivation. And remember, process theories of motivation explore motivation from a perspective that motivation comes from an interaction between individual factors, such as your needs, your need for security, your need for advancement, as well as some external or situational factors, which could be the workplace environment, other people around you, your boss, their leadership style. So the first theory that we're going to tackle is equity theory. And equity theory says that people care about fairness. And they will judge fairness by looking to the ratio of how much you as an employee receive from a job relative to how much you put into a job. So how much you receive from the job is called an output. How much you put into the job is called an input. However, that ratio is not judged alone. It's judged relative to others who are similar to me. So if I'm an assistant professor of marketing, I will judge my, how fair I'm getting paid relative to other assistant professors of marketing. I won't judge, what I'm receiving compared to a medical doctor, because we come with a different set of skills and pay scale, right? So if we take a look at the following model, so this on the left-hand side is the ratio of what you give and get. So the outputs is what you get. So let's say $3,000, and let's say you put in $200. While your peer or someone who's worked with you gets $3,750, but they put in 250 hours of work. Outputs could be anything that you get. They could be pay, benefits, the assignments. They could be your tenure, job security. Inputs includes a variety of different things as well. It could be your seniority. It's not only the time that you give them, your experience, right? Your effort. And some people even consider their attractiveness as something that they, input into their job, their physical attractiveness. So if we look at these two ratios over here, we'll find that they are equal. 3,000 over 200 is 15, and 3,550 over 250 is 15. So despite, that other person getting more, you should perceive that there's fairness because they've put in more work. So the ratio of what they got relative to what they are putting in is exactly the ratio of what you got relative to what you're putting in. So if you look at down on the left-hand side, we have equity. You're supposed to be satisfied with your job. However, there are other cases which might cause negative inequity. So if you put in 3,200 hours and you get $3,000, but the other person, puts in less time for the same outcome for the same salary, then that would be negative inequity, right? Because, they're putting in less time, less work for the same salary. So you'll be, in this case, dissatisfied. However, there could also be positive inequity, which is the flip side. Let's say you work less, but get more money compared to your peers. That's positive inequity. Some people might say it's good, but the problem is that other person is having a negative inequity. You have positive inequity. That will also lead to your feelings of guilt and deservings. Oh, did I deserve this, salary? Did I, should I get that? And that might lead you to feel guilt, which is not a good emotion to experience. So sense of fairness in the workplace is very important. However, the theory has evolved, and instead of looking at one type of theory or one type of justice, we're looking at three types of justice or fairness. One is called distributive justice or fairness, procedural justice or fairness, and interactional justice. So I've come up with an example here. Let's say you've been allocated a specific office, and you think, that's small. That's a sense of what we call distributive justice. Distributive justice has to deal with the amount of resources that you have been allocated. So here you think that you've been allocated very few resources, small amount of resources. I have a smaller office, and that's called distributive justice. Then there is the procedure in which you got that office. Was the procedure, were the rules fair? So is allocating office size based on seniority fair? So if you think that allocating office size based on seniority is unfair, then you've experienced procedural injustice. However, if you feel that allocating office size is fair, then you have experienced procedural justice. You feel that's fair. Well, you might not think that the outcome is fair, but you might think that the procedure to reaching it is fair. So the procedure at least has been followed, I mean. Okay, so the procedure to reach that has been followed, and then therefore there was fairness in following the procedures. Finally, there is interactional justice. Okay, and this deals with how fairly were you dealt with in the process. So were you dealt with rudely, or were you treated with respect? So maybe my boss was rude in informing me of how he allocated the office to me. So there is interactional injustice. So a workplace has to be really aware of these type of justices here, or fairnesses. And so how do we use the equity and justice theories? Well, employees' perceptions are what count. So the perception or fairness is a perception. So do I think what I received is fair? What you might have received is fair, but if people don't perceive that, then there is no fairness. You might hear that your colleague has earned more money, and you feel that that's unfair. But when you hear that they've worked even a number of hours, a greater number of hours for that, you might perceive that there is fairness. The other thing that you have to be aware of is sometimes employees want a voice in the decision that affect them. They want maybe to be heard. Okay, so maybe you can sit down with them and say, okay, why were they perceive that there's unfairness, and maybe you can communicate and rectify the situation. So maybe they haven't received the proper bonus that they were promised, and therefore maybe you can go ahead and go through the records and say, oh, well, that was promised, and let's say give you the bonus. So hearing their voice is very important. They should also be given an appeals process, which is tied to the voice that we've talked about. Leader behavior also matters. Is the leader fair in treating others? If there's a sense of fairness, then people will be satisfied. And at the end, the climate of justice, all of these types of justices are very important. Another theory which talks about motivation, and from a process perspective, is expectancy theory. And this is a very interesting one because it says that people are motivated based on the outcomes that they expect. So I'll start with the bottom over here. So let's say, you put 6 months of effort into a project, and you want to sell computers to a specific company, and you're anticipating that is going to take you 6 months. So that's the amount of effort that you anticipate. And if you do that effort, that might lead to a performance goal of you landing the deal to supply computers to that company. And what then is the outcome? It might be 5% commission on profit. Okay. So if you value this outcome, if you value this 5% profit, then you're likely to put in the effort to reach the goal to land the deal to sell, or to supply the computers to the company. However, there are 3 components over here that people usually take a look at. Is first expectancy. Okay, so what are the chances of reaching my performance goal? So if you feel that you will put in those 6 months effort and with a high certainty be able to land that deal, then you perceive that there's high expectancy. However, if you think that you put in all of this 6 months of effort and your chances are very low of reaching that goal, then you're not likely there to perform to do all of that effort, and the expectancy is low. Okay, Then the next thing is instrumentality. And it says, what are the chances of receiving various outcomes if I achieve my performance goals? So what are the chances of me getting my commission on my profit, commission on the profit if I land the deal to supply the computers? So there has to be trust between the company and the salesperson in this case, that if they really sell or land that deal, they'll get, let's say, the 5% commission, right? So there's high instrumentality over here. Finally is valence. How much do I value the outcomes that I'll be receiving by achieving my performance goals? So is the 5% commission on the profit something desirable? If the salesperson doesn't seem that that's desirable, then they're not likely to put in the effort at the beginning. So what is this theory important for? First of all, you have to determine what are the outcomes that employees value. Is it a higher salary? Is it maybe a bonus? Is it respect? What is it that their employees value? Because according to this theory, if the outcomes are not valued, then employees will not be motivated to do anything. They look at the outcomes first, and then any kind of performance follows from that. The next thing is we should identify good performance so appropriate behaviors can be rewarded. So as we talked about the outcomes at the end, performance also needs to be identified. Okay, so what is good performance? So in higher education, is better performance, higher student evaluation scores? Is it maybe the greater number of publications that your faculty publish? Or if you're working in healthcare, what is good performance? Is it good evaluations from your patients? Is it the number of patients who stay with the practice? Is it maybe the money that you're bringing into the practice? So all the performance has to be identified. What is good performance? Because without it, your employees cannot put in the effort. Okay, make sure employees can achieve targeted performance levels, right? So the first thing you have to, as we talked about, with the expectancy, they have to feel that if they put in the effort, they can achieve these performance levels. I remember in one of my previous jobs, the target level was almost impossible. No one thought that they could reach the highest level of expectations. We employees eventually thought that was just put up there to make employees think, oh, there are great bonuses, but in actuality, no one thought that they could achieve them. Okay. Finally, link desired outcomes to target levels of performance. So basically, we have to, as we said, link the outcomes to the performance. So if we have the outcome is, let's say, a 5% increase in salary, okay, what target level of performance achieves that? In some jobs, for example, they will give a scale of performance from 1 to 5, or from 1 to 4, let's say above expected, expected, below expected. And let's say if you get above expected, you'll get that 5%. If you get, let's say, expected, you get a 4% increase, and so forth. So any kind of performance is linked to the outcome at the end. And finally, we also have to make sure that the outcomes are large enough. So if the 5% increase in salary is not motivating, it won't make people move to do a better job, then it's not sufficient. Okay, so I think this is a very important here, a theory to show you how to motivate your employees. Okay. So another type of theory, a third theory that we're talking about, is about goal setting. And in goal setting theory, we said that setting goals helps people, groups, and organizations succeed. Goals have to be difficult and specific. That's one of the things that are important for this. Specific means that it has to be quantify it. So we can't tell our employees we want to increase customer satisfaction. We can tell them we want to increase our customer satisfaction by 1 point on a 5-point scale. So we want to go from, let's say, 3 to 4, or from 4 to 5. Okay. So that way you can set a goal of achieving a better level of customer satisfaction. What's more, very important also, is that people have to have the ability and resources to do that. For example, in the scenario that I give you, if increasing customer satisfaction depends on other departments other than the one you work for, and you have no control over them, and you can't hire more employees, and you don't have resources for that, then the goal you set before is beyond what you can achieve. So there's no way you can move to increase that 1 point in customer satisfaction on a 5-point scale. Okay, and that people need to be committed to the goal. That's one thing. As a department head in the past, if you didn't get anyone to rally around, let's say, the goal of improving the program in the marketing program, of, let's say, increasing the number of students admitted, then there's no way you could do it alone. Okay. One of the things that are also very important in this theory is that performance feedback is very important. You need to tell your employees how well they're working towards achieving these goals. So are they doing well in increasing customer satisfaction or not? Okay. And one of the good things about this theory is, and it's also related to the previous one, is people are goal-directed. What do we mean by goal-directed? People like to solve problems. And when they achieve these goals, meaning that they solve a specific problem, that leads to job satisfaction. So we've, let's say, increased customer satisfaction from 3 to 4. Whoa, we've done a good job. So that means that leads to job satisfaction because we've achieved that specific goal. Goals are very important because they direct attention, as we said before. If I tell my employees at, let's say, Chick-fil-A, at Southwest Airlines, at Disney, our job is to increase customer satisfaction. So it directs your employees to what they need to pay attention to. They also make sure that their effort is directed towards that, and that they persist on achieving it even if they fail. And that you finally set plans to achieve that. So you sit down together as a department, as individuals, and say, okay, so we want to increase customer satisfaction. Okay, so let's come up with a training manual. Let's maybe monitor calls to see how things are going. Let's give feedback to our employees. And that's why setting goals is very important. So Jane believes if she works hard and takes an online class, she will receive the promotion. What element of motivation does this represent? Okay, is it justice theory, equity theory, instrumentality, valence, or expectancy? If you said C, instrumentality, then you're right. So what is the probability of her putting in the effort and getting that goal at the end? So that is instrumentality.